that are new to this presentation, and one is the largest work in the show, which is we've titled Fashion Wall.
Yeah.
And it is a kind of massive 60-plus foot photo collage that brings together this kind of archive of your work in fashion, like kind of timeline with the street scene in Ghana. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that work and what kind of bringing into this exhibition did for thinking more deeply about fashion and your work in fashion, and kind of this critique and the ways in which race and politics are part of your work in fashion.
Yeah, well, the back wall is very much like a street scene in Accra, where my parents are from, where had they not immigrated to the US, like that's where I would be, you know, so it's also a representation of knowing where I'm from, sort of to know where I'm at. All the work in front of it doesn't exist if my parents hadn't, it might not exist in the same way, you could say, had my parents not sort of believed in sort of giving opportunity to their kids. So that's like the macro contextualization, but then in the micro, you know, I don't even know, I don't like look backwards. I couldn't even tell you how many years that I've been like a fashion designer, but you know, I do 12 collections a year for 2 brands, you know, each collection is like 3,000, 5,000 pieces. So, you know, so it's like as one, and this is me, I'm thinking about everything makes sense. So if I've been doing that for the better part of 6 years, there's a lot of collection, but I can't do that unless I have a story, unless I'm sort of like advocating for something, and that's where Michael's point comes through. It's like I have very strong opinions, you know, but I'm an observer in a way. So what I'm doing is always like cataloging and observing culture, and then I put it into objects that go into culture that can sort of hopefully reshape it. And so that wall is just me picking out all white looks, like using color as like an organizing device. So I just went back to the beginning of my career, anything that was all white, and picked it all out. And so that's what that wall is, just sort of the way to look at it. I know that, you know, Michael and I have always been trying to organize how to look at the fashion part of my work, and I'm glad to debut that new lens.
To me, it's an interesting follow-up too, because early on when we were figuring out the final touches of the MCA show, you were like, what if we brought over a bunch of like soil from Ghana and make this sculpture? And then we're just like, oh man, how are we gonna like get that through customs and like fumigate it and like all these things that museums require? So I love that the Ghana reference has come through finally in this new version.
Well, a lot of it, it's like you can't, it's like I know that's what makes things look shiny. You put them on a white plinth and all of a sudden they're like in this new context, but you can't remove where we came from to understand what you're looking at. You know, and I think right now we're in this like social media, we're sort of like soundbite culture where everything is reduced to like one sentence before you look at it. And I'm always trying to sort of eloquently give the A before you look at the Z. You know, you need that. So my work in fashion, obviously it's political. You know, I'm one of the very few like people of color in the spaces that I'm in. And mind you, like what I said in the beginning, my work isn't for, it's not for the establishment to sort of, it's not made to sit in the establishment. What's made is that like a 14-year-old kid comes in here and sees something they relate to, and then like the light bulb goes off in their head and they're like, I got it. Like the next 30 years of my life is resolved because I've seen someone meet me halfway. You know, it took me 40 years to develop these ideas. It took me a lot of we just talked about the rug when you walk on, and this is the irony, just in one example, there's a rug right when you walk into the first gallery that's a critique of my very first fashion collection. It was the first bad press that I've ever had. And it jolted me, it almost like kicked me back. And this happens in everyone's life. This is not just a personal story. Someone in your close whether it's family or friends, says like, what do you tell them your dream? And then they quickly, in 2 seconds, unravel it. And so that was critiquing Pyrex, which is the first brand before Off-White. And just fast forward, now it's a rug for people to step on. And that's like, that to me, in that short, sort of abbreviated story, is the power of contemporary art. You know, once you have the rationale lined up, there's a sort of impenetrable sort of access to get out the ideas, no matter the perspective.